For a few 100,000 years, there's been a balance meted out over the landscape. Flooding, drought, wildfires, and a bunch of thousands of years of glaciation thrown in for good measure. An uneasy balance of chaos, time and space that interconnects and works. And then we came along, and overnight, relatively speaking, a new force emerged on the landscape. A force that has the drive and ambition, fueled by progress, to turn up the dial on ecological processes like never before. If we look where we live, we see how in 2 or 3 short decades, meandering streams and rivers have been channelized, their floodplains filled with shopping malls and asphalt. So it goes without saying, no other species has transformed our landscapes to the extent of which humans have, except one, perhaps. You guessed it, we're talking about a rodent here, folks. Oh, we all know about our little friend the beaver. His handiwork is everywhere. His little calling cards have the ability to make us feel pretty angry and helpless. Typically, it's tough to love them with their industriousness and wanton destruction, and as a result, all it takes is one noisy cylindrical stick to restore our sense of law and order and ecological aesthetics. Why can't we get along with beaver? Well, it seems we don't have the ability to give up either one of the requisites of ecological progression: time or space. The time to get the work done, and the space to get it done in. Let's look at Bob Creek, just your average medium-sized stream. This is 2003, right after the Beaver Dam failed. The same location 3 years later. 3 years! The beat of an eyelash in ecological terms. There's a whole lot more going on here other than things just turning green. Beaver dams trap sediment. Sediment that goes on to becoming a floodplain. Okay, we've seen what 3 years gives us. How about a decade? This photo of an active beaver meadow was taken in July 1995. And then again, 10 years later, the beavers are gone and we have a new floodplain about a meter higher than the old one. Let's try and imagine this 10-year process multiplied 1,000-fold. To do that, let's go back some thousands of years and imagine the landscape after that big continental ice sheet melted and an ocean full of meltwater carved out jagged, V-shaped valleys. Over millennia, beavers have done their job, recolonizing ice-gouged and meltwater-eroded valleys, and transforming these valleys into the broad, productive valley bottoms we have today. Lift and flatten. Time after time, archaeologists have found that the first layer of organic matter lying above glacial deposits are remnants of an ancient beaver pond. In early Aboriginal creation stories, it was said that the great beaver fetched the mud from which the earth was built. If the beaver didn't build the earth, it did collect the mud for most of the tillable portions of the northern hemisphere. In a sense, we are living today on the interest from the beaver's capital. V-shaped valley to productive valley bottoms. Lift and flatten. Seems like important work, no? So why don't we just let you get on with the job, Mr. Beaver? To do that, we would need to make a fundamental shift in our thinking. A shift to tolerance. Unfortunately for us, the most recent colonists of the Great Plains Basin, our capacity for tolerance has been severely limited because we aren't used to considering the beaver in our planning. For the last century, we've been managing and developing our landscapes without having to think about the beaver. They were pretty much taken out of the picture in our quest for beaver hats. So when we see them out and about doing their thing, we have no insight into the larger ecological role they're playing, and as a result, we have limited tolerance for this activity. Okay, so we owe the beaver big time for building the earth up. Thanks, beaver, okay? But now we have bigger issues to deal with. A little bit of climate change and some poor watershed management, bam, just like that, we're running out of fresh water. So what are you going to do about that, Mr. Beaver? Well, as it turns out, he might have the answer to this too. By building dams, beavers store water and build up the water table for when we need it, in times of prolonged drought. And unfortunately, drought's not going away. As climate change continues to play out, our snowpacks and glaciers will continue shrinking and melting and flowing earlier in the spring. The much-needed water in our streams and wetlands will be in short supply by late summer, when we need it. Okay, if it's agreed that beaver are a good thing, then how many beaver are too many beaver? We're pretty good at counting things, so this shouldn't be a major obstacle. Rudimentary beaver biology and population estimates can determine whether we need more hats or more beavers. Once we have the populations at their carrying capacity, then all we have to do is outsmart them. No offense, Mr. Beaver, but we should be able to do that. If we've bought into the idea that we do care about the watersheds and ecosystems that support us, and if we are concerned about the effects of climate change and the next big drought that might be around the corner, it might be a good idea to keep all the tools in our toolbox. Even if it means getting used to a site like this. To reap the benefits of a beaver's good work, we have to give him a lot more time and a little more space.